Have you ever wondered why certain individuals become increasingly isolated as they age, while others remain surrounded by meaningful relationships? It's rarely about physical changes or slowing down. Rather, we all develop subtle habits over time that can either nurture connections or quietly push people away. The concerning part is that most of us remain unaware of these patterns until the consequences become significant. The encouraging news? These habits can be changed. Let me share with you the story of Margaret, a retired teacher whose journey reveals how these patterns develop and how she transformed her life by addressing them. The negativity. Margaret never imagined she'd become someone who harbored negativity. She always considered herself straightforward, simply expressing honest opinions. But gradually, something shifted within her consciousness. It began subtly. A sigh here, a fleeting complaint there. Soon these reactions formed a pattern she couldn't ignore. Mornings started with acknowledging the familiar discomforts of aging, muttering to herself about getting older. Seemingly harmless, these grumbles spread into other aspects of her day. Watching news broadcasts increased her frustration and helplessness about society's direction. Conversations with younger relatives grew sharp. "During my generation, people showed more respect," she'd remarked dismissively. Initially, Margaret didn't recognize the impact on her relationships. Friends began shortening conversations, avoiding deeper discussions, and steering clear of topics that might trigger another tirade. Even her grandchildren, once eager visitors, started making excuses to avoid spending time with her. What Margaret couldn't perceive was how her negativity gradually drained those around her. Despite feeling justified in her perspectives, she failed to realize that nobody wants to leave an interaction feeling worse than when they arrived. Negativity acts like a weight, pulling others down and creating distance rather than connection. It's remarkably easy to slip into criticism as life changes around us. Our bodies function differently, and tasks that once came naturally, shopping, driving, using technology, become sources of frustration. Venting might provide temporary relief, but when negativity becomes your default response, it transforms into a barrier that isolates rather than a tool for processing emotions. Margaret began changing this pattern by starting conversations positively instead of leading with complaints. She practiced beginning with gratitude. "I woke feeling refreshed today," or "The sunset was breathtaking yesterday." These simple shifts became part of her daily reflections. Positive energy spreads magnetically. People gravitate toward those who uplift rather than burden them. When Margaret needed to express frustrations, she set boundaries, allowing herself brief moments to voice concerns before moving to constructive topics. She discovered that curiosity proves more powerful than criticism. Rather than dismissing her grandchildren's interests, she began asking, "Tell me more about that." This approach built bridges instead of barriers. When Margaret implemented these small changes, leading with positivity, showing genuine interest in others' lives, and expressing gratitude more frequently, she noticed remarkable improvements. Conversations lengthened, people opened up to her again, and the warmth of connection she'd been missing gradually returned. Her painful but valuable lesson: the energy you project into the world mirrors what returns to you. Connection requires giving first, starting with how you communicate, how you present yourself, and how you choose to perceive your surroundings. Personal appearance matters. Margaret once took pride in her appearance, carefully selecting outfits, applying makeup thoughtfully, and ensuring her hair looked presentable before leaving home. Her colorful wardrobe and signature fragrance reflected her confident personality. As years passed, subtle changes emerged. She began skipping salon appointments and choosing loose, comfortable clothing instead of her previously stylish ensembles. "Why bother?" became her internal question. After all, she wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. Eventually, she found herself remaining in loungewear all day, rarely glancing in mirrors. She convinced herself it didn't matter, but something fundamental was shifting internally. Her self-perception transformed, affecting how she felt and how others treated her. Strangers who previously complimented her vibrant outfits now barely acknowledged her presence. Friends who regularly invited her to social gatherings began including her less frequently. Looking at old photographs, Margaret hardly recognized the vivacious woman she once embodied. Where had that person gone? The truth she hadn't fully grasped. How we present ourselves influences not only others' perceptions, but also our self-image. Personal appearance isn't about vanity. It's about self-respect and honoring yourself regardless of age. It's about showing up authentically and affirming your worth. Margaret's transformation began with small, manageable steps. She started dressing properly even when staying home. Nothing elaborate, just clean, well-fitted clothes that made her feel comfortable and confident. Basic self-care routines, showering regularly, styling her hair, maintaining her nails, sent powerful messages to herself. I deserve this attention. Wearing favorite items that brought joy elevated her spirits. Small touches like perfume or cherished jewelry made significant differences, reminding her of her essential self, the woman she'd always been and continued becoming. When Margaret renewed these simple habits, styling her hair, wearing favorite blouses, applying a touch of lipstick, something remarkable happened. She felt lighter, more confident, and even beautiful again. People smiled when she entered rooms. She felt acknowledged and, more importantly, reconnected with herself. The vibrant woman she feared lost was quietly re-emerging, not just in others' perceptions but in her own reflection. Embracing change, Margaret had always prided herself on knowing precisely what she preferred and how she wanted things done. Her established routines provided comfort. Why change what had worked for decades? When her family began communicating through text messages instead of phone calls, Margaret resisted. I don't need to learn all that, she'd declare, dismissing their offers to teach her. If they want to talk to me, they can pick up the phone. Over time, those phone calls diminished. Family updates, photos, and important reminders arrived in group chats she refused to join. Initially unaware, she was disconnecting from those she cherished most. The issue wasn't technology. It was about maintaining connection, participating in their lives, about love itself. Margaret's stubbornness was isolating her. The reality is that change inevitably continues. Life progresses, and resistance often stems from feeling left behind. The challenge lies in remaining receptive. It's simple to say, I don't need that, but genuine strength emerges from saying, I'll try. Embracing change, however small, keeps you engaged and mentally sharp. Margaret didn't need to become technologically proficient overnight. She could begin with small steps, letting family members teach her texting basics or exploring interests they enjoyed. When Margaret finally allowed her granddaughter to demonstrate texting, she was surprised by its simplicity. Even more surprising was discovering the connections she'd been missing. Daily photos of her great-grandchildren, inside jokes, quick check-ins that fostered belonging. By releasing her resistance, she embraced something far more valuable than new technology, genuine connection. Learning to text wasn't merely about communication methods, it meant staying connected with beloved family members. This openness granted her access to new communication forms while deepening relationships and love within her family circle. Letting go of clutter, Margaret had always been sentimental. Every item in her home contained a story, a memory, a fragment of history she couldn't relinquish. Old greeting cards untouched for decades, newspaper stacks awaiting future reading, unworn clothes preserved just in case, all accumulated over time. Her once welcoming home gradually transformed from peaceful sanctuary to overwhelming maze. Possessions cluttered every corner, shelf, and room. She couldn't deny the transformation. What once provided haven now resembled a battleground, filled with rarely used items she couldn't bring herself to discard. Initially, Margaret denied any problem. She convinced herself everything held value, often stating, I might need this someday. This reasoning felt secure and reassuring. In reality, the overwhelming clutter suffocated her home's vitality, peace, and spirit. As time passed, she grew, increasingly exhausted trying to clean and navigate through accumulated piles. Maintaining order, locating necessities, and welcoming visitors without embarrassment became increasingly difficult. Her formerly inviting space now symbolized her entrapment in the past and reluctance to release what no longer served her. When her daughter gently suggested, "Perhaps consider letting go of some things," Margaret immediately resisted. "What if I need them later?" she argued. In truth, the clutter filled not just her physical space but her mental clarity too. The stress of maintaining so many possessions weighed heavily, blocking present joys and disrupting her peace. This wasn't merely about objects but about emotional attachments accumulated alongside them. Releasing possessions, particularly those with sentimental significance, challenges us deeply. Yet holding excessive material or emotional baggage creates stagnation, preventing forward movement and present appreciation. This silent thief robs clarity and tranquility. Margaret eventually realized that achieving genuine freedom required letting go. Breaking free from clutter demands patience, self-compassion, and courage to acknowledge we don't need everything we've preserved. She started small, addressing one drawer, shelf, or box at a time. Attempting to declutter everything simultaneously would overwhelm anyone, but manageable segments made the process bearable. She questioned each item. "Do I use this? Does it bring joy?" Negative answers signaled time for release. She donated usable items, recycled those beyond usefulness, and passed meaningful possessions to family members who would appreciate them. Decluttering became a daily habit. Removing one item daily created profound transformation over time. The practical benefits were equally important. Clutter creates not just mental stress but physical dangers, increasing fall risks and injuries. A home should provide safety, comfort, and peace, not hazards. When Margaret finally committed to decluttering, magical transformation followed. Donating unworn clothes, recycling old magazines, and reorganizing her living space for practicality lifted enormous weight from her shoulders. The change wasn't merely physical. Her home felt lighter, brighter, more welcoming. For the first time in years, Margaret experienced peace within her home and found herself excited to invite friends over again, something she hadn't felt in ages. Finding patience, Margaret never considered herself impatient. She always tried to demonstrate kindness, understanding, and forgiveness. But gradually, small fractures appeared in her patience, brief moments when irritation surfaced and composure faltered. One afternoon at the supermarket, standing in line, with her filled cart, she watched a young cashier working deliberately, fumbling with bags. Frustration built within her. "Why is he so slow? Can't he move faster?" she thought as her temper rose. Before she could stop herself, she blurted, "Come on, could you hurry up?" Immediately after speaking, she noticed the cashier's expression fall. He looked downward, hands trembling slightly as he attempted to complete his task. The realization struck her. This young man was new, nervous, doing his best, and there she was, snapping at him as though he caused her distress. Guilt immediately surfaced. Was she becoming someone she'd previously disliked? Someone quick to judge, quick to criticize, slow to extend grace? As we age, maintaining patience with others becomes challenging. Life's rhythm changes, creating frustration when the surrounding world moves differently than we prefer. However, impatience harms not only others but ourselves too, elevating stress, clouding judgment, and poisoning interactions with everyone we encounter. Margaret learned that the first step toward patience is pausing before reacting. When irritation approaches, take a deep breath and consider, is this worth becoming upset? Remember that the slow driver might be someone's grandfather, and the struggling cashier might be a student doing their best. A little patience extends considerably. During her next encounter with the same young cashier, Margaret smiled, complimented his efforts, and assured him he was performing well. His face brightened, and in that moment, she recognized kindness's power. Small gestures significantly impact others' experiences and reduce their burdens. Patience benefits not only recipients but givers too. Choosing patience over frustration leads to reduced stress, improved interactions, and greater internal peace. The art of listening. Margaret had always enjoyed conversation. Her wealth of stories, advice, and memories made her the family's natural storyteller. One problem existed, however. She dominated discussions without realizing it. One day her daughter, who had been calling less frequently, finally expressed her feelings. "I love talking with you, but sometimes I don't feel heard. Our conversations seem one-sided, and I rarely share what's important to me." Margaret felt stunned. How had she missed this? She realized that during their conversations, she immediately shared her experiences, stories, and advice without pausing to listen. The truth was painful. She had become so focused on sharing wisdom that she forgot giving her daughter space to speak. As we age, believing we possess all answers becomes tempting. We want to share life lessons and accumulated wisdom. However, without truly listening to loved ones, we risk pushing them away. Margaret confronted the reality that her desire to share had unintentionally isolated her from those she loved most. Better conversations require balance. Speaking is important, but listening is essential. After speaking for a while, pause and inquire, "What about you? How are things going?" Make conscious efforts to show genuine interest in others' words. Resist interrupting, even when excellent stories come to mind. Create space for others to express themselves. Ask open-ended questions, encouraging authentic conversation. Rather than "How are you?" try "What exciting events happened this week?" During her next conversation with her daughter, Margaret deliberately practiced listening. She asked more questions, gave her daughter conversational space, and offered advice only when genuinely needed. The results proved remarkable. Their discussions became longer, warmer, more meaningful. Margaret discovered that exceptional conversations involve listening attentively rather than speaking extensively. Through this simple act of listening, she rediscovered connection's beauty. Accepting help, Margaret had always taken pride in her independence. Her identity centered around self-sufficiency. For decades, she had nurtured others, raised children with abundant love, efficiently managed household responsibilities, and assisted neighbors whenever needed. Being the reliable person others depended upon felt rewarding. As years progressed, subtle changes emerged. Tasks that once seemed effortless gradually became challenging. One afternoon, struggling with a heavy grocery bag from her car, arms trembling under the weight, a passing young man noticed her difficulty and kindly offered assistance. "Need help with that?" Margaret's pride produced a forced smile as she declined, "No thank you, I've got it." But she didn't. Dragging the heavy bag inside intensified her back pain, while frustration and isolation washed over her. Each step felt increasingly difficult. Not merely from physical strain, but from the emotional burden of rejecting kindness. She had rebuffed someone genuinely trying to help, someone who recognized her struggle and wished to ease it. In that moment, Margaret felt profoundly alone. Later that evening in her quiet home, painful awareness struck her like cold wind. Her refusal to request or accept assistance wasn't strengthening her, but gradually severing connections that once provided comfort. She was choosing isolation over connection, independence over interdependence. Requesting help demonstrates strength, not weakness. Seeking assistance doesn't create burden, but allows others opportunities to demonstrate care, love, and support. People genuinely want to help. Consistently rejecting them eventually discourages offers. When that happens, you become not just physically burdened, but emotionally deprived. Accepting help fosters connection, building bridges between hearts and creating shared humanity transcending specific tasks. Whether someone holds doors, lifts heavy objects, or listens empathetically, allowing others assistance simplifies life physically and emotionally, reminding us we needn't struggle alone. When others feel useful, you're giving them gifts. Imagine living where nobody needed your help. You'd feel insignificant, unnecessary. Why deny others the satisfaction of assisting you? Margaret recognized necessary changes. Next time someone offered help, she promised herself to set pride aside and accept. Encountering that young man again while shopping, she smiled warmly. Actually, I could use assistance today." His expression brightened as he took her bag, and Margaret felt weight lifting, not from her arms but her heart. In that simple exchange, profound internal transformation occurred. She felt seen, valued, and most importantly, connected. Balancing financial prudence and enjoyment, Margaret exemplified financial discipline. A natural budgeter, she enthusiastically used coupons, easily declined vacations, and carefully considered any non-essential purchases. Despite having comfortable savings, persistent worry lurked. What if unexpected expenses arise? What if I need this money later? This continuous cycle of accumulation without enjoyment raised questions. What purpose did savings serve if not enhancing life quality? When her closest friend Eleanor invited her for a countryside weekend getaway, Margaret's immediate response was reluctance. Travel meant expenses. Restaurants meant costs. Everything created anxiety. What if I regret these expenditures? But internally, a quiet voice questioned, when did I last treat myself? For years, Margaret had maintained the saving for someday mindset. Now, contemplating Eleanor's invitation, she wondered, what if someday never arrives? What exactly am I saving for if not living now? Being financially responsible matters greatly, but life transcends savings accumulation. Research indicates that experiential purchases, travel, activities, hobbies, generate more lasting satisfaction than material possessions. While objects, gadgets, and clothing depreciate with time, experiences create enduring memories. Margaret had worked diligently throughout life to establish financial security. However, security without fulfillment resembles an empty vessel. Well-balanced living requires enjoying hard-earned rewards without diminishing achievements but honoring them. Margaret decided to permit herself reasonable indulgences. Life's simple pleasures, whether dining out, spontaneous interests, or weekend excursions. She committed to prioritizing soul-nourishing experiences and established a pleasure fund specifically for enjoyment. When Eleanor next proposed a weekend trip, Margaret hesitated briefly before accepting. The results were transformative. She laughed more during those 2 days than previous months combined. She felt sunshine warming her face, savored delicious meals with wonderful company, and most importantly, remembered living fully. Watching Sunset with Eleanor, Margaret realized this represented her savings purpose. Moments, memories, connections. Money should support happiness, not remain untouched in accounts. Respecting younger generations, Margaret adored her grandson Thomas. His visits highlighted her week. She enjoyed hearing about his school experiences, hobbies, and particularly his enthusiasm for video games. Recently, however, these visits felt different, more distant with awkward conversations. Thomas seemed less engaged, more absorbed in his phone than their interaction. When Thomas mentioned an exciting new application, Margaret sighed disapprovingly. In my generation, we didn't require all this technology. Children played outdoors instead of staring at screens constantly. Thomas grew quiet before mumbling he should leave. As the door closed behind him, sharp regret pierced Margaret's heart. She hadn't intended pushing him away, but she had. Her words, though meant to share wisdom, only made him feel dismissed and invalidated. Attempting connection, she had unknowingly constructed barriers between them. It's easy becoming trapped in nostalgia about better days, but constantly reminding younger people that previous times surpassed present experiences invalidates their challenges and circumstances. Rather than fostering understanding, such comparisons create division. Every generation confronts unique challenges and battles. Instead of criticizing younger generations, we should support and encourage their journeys. Next time Thomas mentioned something unfamiliar, Margaret took a deep breath and responded, "That sounds fascinating. Please tell me more." Rather than dismissal, she chose curiosity, making efforts to understand his perspective by asking questions demonstrating attentive listening. When Thomas explained his gaming strategies, something beautiful happened. They connected through mutual respect. Their conversation flowed naturally, creating genuine connection moments previously missing. Sometimes improving intergenerational relationships doesn't require changing others, but understanding them, seeing through their perspective, and meeting them where they are. Releasing grudges and regrets. Holding grudges and regrets resembles carrying heavy weights that gradually deplete energy. This burden exceeds mental constraints, infiltrating every life aspect, stealing present joy and distorting perspective. Each time you dwell on past wounds, you deny yourself present moment beauty. Have you caught yourself remembering previous injustices or betrayals, suddenly reliving pain while your surroundings seem dimmer? That represents resentment's grip. The tighter you clutch negative memories, the further you distance yourself from surrounding love and joy. Painfully, bitterness erodes relationships almost imperceptibly, complicating connections with loved ones. Without awareness, resentment forms barriers dividing you from those you care about. In worse scenarios, it transforms into anger, accumulating until your heart hardens, leaving you questioning your isolation even among others. The health impact cannot be overlooked. Grudges and regrets exceed emotional baggage. Persistent stress remains physically, continuous tension and negativity potentially raising blood pressure, disrupting sleep patterns, and compromising immune function. Though ignored, these feelings affect well-being profoundly. Escaping consequences of harboring past pain proves impossible. Finding emotional freedom begins with accepting harsh reality. The past remains unchangeable. Events cannot be undone regardless how frequently replayed mentally. Instead of questioning, "Why did this happen to me?" try reframing, "What lessons can I learn from this?" This perspective shift liberates you from past constraints while empowering healthier, happier future creation. Forgiveness becomes crucial, not for those causing harm but for yourself. Forgiving doesn't excuse inappropriate behavior but releases its control over you, setting yourself free. Releasing grudges demonstrates courage and strength rather than weakness. It reclaims control over your life, peace, and heart. Shifting focus challenges everyone, but when caught in resentment patterns, pause and redirect thoughts toward present positives. Consider writing letters expressing everything internally held, then destroying them, tearing, burning, releasing, acknowledging. Release time has arrived. Margaret's experience testifies to this journey. After carrying past hurts for years, one evening with paper in hand, she decided releasing everything was necessary. She expressed every regret and wound completely, then took deep breaths, allowing final release. Something internal shifted dramatically. For the first time in years, she felt lighter and freer. The weight dragging her downward for years lifted, enabling forward movement. Prioritizing health. Ignoring health concerns initially seems convenient. Who wants confronting potential problems? This avoidance, however, becomes dangerous. Minor symptoms dismissed might represent the body's warnings about significant issues. Dizziness might indicate dehydration or potentially stroke warning signs. Persistent fatigue attributed to aging could indicate undiagnosed heart conditions. We convince ourselves symptoms are insignificant or temporary, but delaying medical attention often leads to worse outcomes. Minor issues untreated become major health crises. Why do we postpone care? Perhaps we're overwhelmed, focusing elsewhere while ignoring bodily signals. Maybe fear prevents acknowledgement. Regardless, ignoring warning signs doesn't eliminate them, it worsens conditions. Prevention consistently proves easier than crisis management. Small lifestyle adjustments, improved nutrition, or regular physical activity can prevent life-altering health emergencies. Prevention represents self-love and care that we frequently overlook. Margaret learned this lesson painfully after falling, leaving her struggling with hospital pain. She realized how easily she'd neglected her health, believing dizziness represented normal aging. That fall, that painful awakening, changed her perspective completely. She promised never again ignoring subtle signals. She would listen to her body, improve self-care, and prioritize health. She increased hydration, joined balance classes, and scheduled regular medical appointments. Taking health control didn't surrender independence but embraced responsibility for well-being before circumstances worsened. This represents Margaret's valuable lesson for everyone. Ask yourself, have I been ignoring bodily messages? Don't delay until crisis points. Your health deserves priority. You deserve vibrant, complete living, beginning with listening to your body's subtle communications. Rediscovering joy. Looking through old photo albums, Margaret remembered when life overflowed with laughter, joy, and excitement. Photos captured her playing with grandchildren, dancing at family gatherings, smiling in sunshine. Somehow she had stopped pursuing such joys. Life became routine, even monotonous. When Eleanor invited her for movie night, Margaret hesitated before accepting. That evening, as laughter bubbled from deep within, Margaret felt something awakening. Joy hadn't disappeared. It awaited rediscovery. For the first time in years, she remembered laughing until her stomach ached and tears filled her eyes. Laughter provides soul medicine. Beyond mere entertainment, it's essential for emotional and physical well-being, reducing stress, enhancing immunity, improving circulation, and supporting memory. Simply laughing strengthens bonds with others, nurturing relationships. Throughout aging, laughter reminds us of youthful hearts. It gently encourages joyful living and embracing simple pleasures. Margaret left Eleanor's home that evening with lightened heart, realizing joy requires conscious choice rather than accidental discovery. Next morning, instead of watching news or following routine, she played favorite music and danced around her kitchen. That laughter moment, that decision inviting joy back into her life, initiated beautiful transformations. Creating perfect moments rather than awaiting them, and choosing joy became her practice. Reflecting on releasing grudges, prioritizing health, and choosing joyful living. Consider what resonates most deeply with you. Perhaps forgiveness power, laughter's healing properties, or the crucial importance of addressing health concerns. Whatever your takeaway, identify one lesson you'll implement in daily life. The journey toward meaningful connection, regardless of age, begins with conscious choices about how we approach ourselves and others. What lesson will you practice moving forward?